In the early 1800s, Chicago was a small, modest settlement on the southwestern shore of Lake Michigan. It was a place of opportunity, where rivers met land and trade routes crossed. Wooden homes lined dusty streets, smoke rose from small chimneys, and the sound of horses clopping against cobblestones echoed across the town. Despite its size, Chicago was ambitious. Merchants arrived with goods from the east, farmers brought fresh produce, and immigrants from Europe poured in, hoping to build a new life. The city was growing quickly, but underneath its bustling streets and booming markets, it was fragile, built almost entirely of wood. By the mid-1800s, Chicago had become a central hub for industry and trade. Railroads crisscrossed the city, carrying passengers and freight from coast to coast. Factories churned out meat, grain, and supplies for the growing nation. The city's docks teemed with riverboats unloading goods, while merchants negotiated deals, and families navigated the narrow streets with baskets of supplies. It was a city alive with energy, ambition, and dreams, yet all of it rested on flammable foundations. The rising city, life before the fire. Chicago's streets were alive from dawn till dusk. Children played near market stalls, blacksmiths hammered iron in workshops, and vendors shouted their wares to anyone who would listen. Women in long dresses carried baskets of food, while men read newspapers and discussed politics outside crowded shops. The riverfront was the lifeblood of the city. Wooden bridges connected neighborhoods, and horse-drawn wagons transported goods across busy streets. Smoke from factories hung in the air, a testament to the city's growing industrial might. At night, lanterns lit the streets and reflected in the calm waters of Lake Michigan. By 1871, Chicago was a city of contrasts, bustling and vibrant, yet dangerously fragile. Nearly every building, sidewalk, and roof was made of wood. Fire was always a threat, but few imagined the scale of disaster that was about to strike. October 8, 1871. The spark that ignited a city. The summer of 1871 had been unusually dry. Weeks had passed without rain, and the city had become a tinderbox. On the evening of October 8th, a fire started in a small barn on DeKoven Street. Legend would later claim that a cow kicked over a lantern, but the truth remains unknown. What mattered was what happened next. The fire spread quickly. Wind gusts pushed flames across wooden rooftops, and sparks ignited nearby buildings. Within minutes, the blaze was out of control. People fled their homes, carrying whatever they could. Families clutched children, pets, and belongings, running toward safety as the sky glowed in ominous orange. Firefighters rushed to the scene, but were delayed by miscommunication. Water pumps failed, and entire blocks were quickly engulfed. Wooden streets and bridges caught fire, sending embers flying in every direction. The fire moved like a living creature, unstoppable, consuming homes, businesses, and factories alike. As the fire raged through the city, chaos reigned. Horse-drawn wagons collided in panic, crowds surged toward Lake Michigan, and the heat was unbearable. Smoke thickened, blocking out the sun, and firestorms formed as superheated air spiraled above the burning city. Buildings collapsed in minutes, iron melted, and flames reflected in terrified faces. Families huddled together, some carrying children on their shoulders, others clutching the few possessions they could salvage. Birds fled, animals roamed the streets, and the city's lifeblood, its people, struggled to survive. By the morning of October 10th, after nearly 30 hours of relentless flames, rain finally began to fall. Chicago had been transformed. The city lay in ruins. Aftermath: a city in ashes. The destruction was staggering. More than 17,000 buildings had been destroyed, leaving over 100,000 people homeless. Over 300 people lost their lives, and nearly one-third of the city had vanished in flames. Streets were blackened and littered with debris, and neighborhoods that had once thrived were reduced to ash and charred timber. Yet, amid despair, hope began to emerge. Citizens and leaders surveyed the devastation and made a bold choice. Chicago would rebuild.
Aid poured in from across the nation, from cities near and far. Food, clothing, and supplies arrived, and the process of reconstruction began immediately.
Rebirth, building a modern city. The Great Chicago Fire became a turning point. Wooden buildings were banned in the city center. Stone, brick, and steel replaced timber. Architects and engineers saw an opportunity to redesign the urban landscape. Streets were widened, fireproof warehouses lined the riverfront, and public spaces were rebuilt with safety in mind. The fire inadvertently created the perfect laboratory for innovation. Chicago became the birthplace of modern skyscrapers. Steel frame construction allowed buildings to rise taller than ever before. Elevators transformed city life, and architects experimented with new designs that would shape urban centers around the world. Modernization and innovation. By the late 1800s, Chicago had been reborn. Industry returned stronger than ever, and the population grew rapidly. Streets were lined with shops, streetcars connected neighborhoods, and the city thrived as a hub of commerce and culture. Parks, churches, and public buildings were reconstructed in stone and brick, symbolizing the city's resilience. Chicago's rebirth was not just architectural, but social. Immigrants arrived to start anew, bringing cultural diversity that would define the city. Trade flourished along the river, factories hummed with production, and the city skyline began to reach upward, a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance. The legacy of the fire. The Great Chicago Fire left a lasting impact. Fire safety standards changed across the United States. Urban planning and architecture were forever influenced by the lessons learned from the disaster. Chicago's story became a symbol of resilience, proof that a city could rise from ashes stronger, taller, and better prepared for the future. Even today, the city carries the legacy of that fire. Every skyscraper, street, and riverfront building tells a story of survival, innovation, and determination. A city reborn. Chicago in the 1800s was a city of contrasts, ambition and fragility, growth and danger. It faced one of the greatest urban disasters in American history, yet the city's response was remarkable. From destruction emerged innovation, from chaos came order, and from fire rose a modern metropolis that would shape the nation. The story of Chicago is a story of resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, people can rebuild, reimagine, and thrive. The city that burned did not perish, it evolved, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire.